The sink was not broken. I knew that before I had been under it for more than 30 seconds. I was lying on my back in my neighbor Maeve's kitchen, flashlight between my teeth, toolbox open by my knee, and the whole thing told on itself immediately. A real leak leaves a history. It stains the cabinet floor. It swells the cheap wood. It leaves mineral crust around the fitting or a rust-colored ring where water has been sitting too long. Sometimes it smells like old towels and bad decisions. Maeve's cabinet had none of that. It was dry, clean, recently wiped. The P-trap was fine. The pipe was fine. The seal was fine. Only one thing was wrong. The slip nut had been loosened by hand. Not much. Just enough to make a slow drip if the faucet ran for a minute. Just enough to look like an emergency without becoming one. I moved the flashlight closer and stared at it. Then, I looked out from under the sink. Maeve stood near the stove in a soft gray sweater, twisting a dish towel between both hands. Her hair was pulled back like she had done it quickly and redone it 3 times. Behind her, on the little table by the window, 2 plates were already set. Not 1. 2. There was a covered dish on the stove, something warm and garlicky filling the room. A salad sat in a glass bowl. 2 water glasses waited beside folded napkins. She looked at me and tried to smile. Is it bad? That was when I understood 2 things at once. The sink had been loosened on purpose, and dinner had been made before she called me. My name is Ray Mercer. I'm 42 years old, divorced, and I make my living fixing things other people are allowed to admit are broken. I work maintenance for 3 apartment buildings in St. Louis. Same company. Same old brick layouts. Same complaints every season. Heat rattles in January. Window units drip in July. Garbage disposals lose fights with chicken bones all year. People call me when something leaks, sticks, burns out, squeaks, cracks, jams, or refuses to open. I like work like that. A broken thing tells you what it needs if you are patient enough to listen. A pipe does not pretend. A lock does not say it is fine when it is 1 cold night away from failing. A loose hinge never tells you not to worry about it, because other people have bigger problems. People do that. I do that. So I became very good at fixing apartments, and very bad at asking anyone to fix me. Maeve Collins lived across the hall in 4B. She had been there 2 years. I had been across from her in 4A the whole time. We were friendly in the quiet way people become friendly when they are old enough to know how quickly warmth can turn awkward. We said good morning by the mailboxes. We held the elevator if one of us was carrying too much. She left my packages by my door with sticky notes on them, always with some tiny drawing in the corner. A sun. A coffee cup. Once a small crooked wrench after I fixed the lobby door. I kept those notes longer than I should have. Not all of them. Just enough to make it embarrassing. Maeve worked for a small arts nonprofit downtown. She handled programs, schedules, community classes, donors, all the invisible labor that makes good things look effortless to everyone except the person doing them. She carried tote bags full of folders. She wore practical shoes. She watered the dying plant by the elevator even though nobody had asked her to, and when I once said the plant was already gone, she said, "Some things deserve an audience while they try." That line stayed with me. A lot of things about her did. The way she hummed when she waited for the elevator. The way she always read paperbacks with broken spines. The way she looked tired on Thursdays and lighter on Saturdays. The way she remembered things I barely remembered saying. One time Mrs. Pacheco from downstairs asked if I had family in town, and I said no. Just a brother in Kansas City who called once a month to confirm I was alive. 3 weeks later, Maeve passed me in the hallway and said, "Did your brother conduct his monthly survival check yet?" I laughed because I had forgotten telling her. She had not. That was Maeve. She noticed quietly, and I noticed her noticing. But for 2 years, neither of us did anything with it. The closest we came was the ice storm. That was the winter before the fake sink. The whole city turned silver overnight. The steps outside glazed over. Branches bent under ice. Power flickered through the building in little nervous pulses, and around 11 at night, I gave up on sleep and stepped into the hallway. Maeve was already there. She was sitting on the top stair near the landing window, wrapped in a blanket, both hands around a mug. "Power out in your unit too?" she asked. "Mostly. My fridge is still humming like it has faith." She smiled and shifted the blanket. I should have said goodnight. Instead, I sat on the step below her. We watched the parking lot shine under one working streetlight. Cars looked like they had been sealed under glass. The city was silent in the way only bad weather can make it silent, as if everyone had agreed to hold their breath. Maeve went back into her apartment after a minute and came out with a second mug of coffee. "No question, just coffee." I took it. "Thanks, you looked like a man who takes bad weather personally." "I do." "Why?" "Maintenance. Ice means calls. Calls mean flooded ceilings, busted heaters, people trying to thaw pipes with hairdryers and prayer. That sounds exhausting." "It is." She looked out the window. "My job is mostly people pretending they are not exhausted. That also sounds exhausting." "It is." We talked for almost an hour. Not about the weather after a while. About real things. She told me she had moved to St. Louis after a long relationship ended, because she wanted a place where nobody knew who she had been before. I told her my marriage had ended quietly, which sounds kinder than it was. Quiet endings still break things. They just do it without giving you a scene to point at later. She said she hated how easy it was to become functional instead of happy. I said functional had treated me pretty well. She looked at me over her mug and said, "Has it?" I did not answer. Because it had not. Not really. At one point, our shoulders touched through her blanket and my jacket. Neither of us moved away. I remember that more clearly than I remember entire years of my life. Then the cold won. She stood. I stood. We said goodnight at our separate doors like normal neighbors. I went inside, sat in my dark kitchen, and thought, there she is. Then, I did nothing. For another year. That is the part I am not proud of. I could blame timing or fear, or the fact that we lived across from each other and a bad attempt could ruin the one soft part of the building. I could say she seemed too self-contained, too bright, too much like someone who did not need a man who smelled like pipe sealant and carried spare screws in his jacket. All of that was true. None of it was the truth. The truth was that I liked the safe version, the hallway version, the package notes, the elevator smiles, the one ice storm memory I could keep polished in my mind without risking rejection. I had a wall between us, and the wall felt safe. Then she loosened her own sink. I slid out from under the cabinet and sat up slowly. Maeve watched me like she was waiting for a verdict. I could have embarrassed her. I could have said, "You did this." I could have pointed at the slipknot, the dry cabinet, the fake emergency, the dinner sitting under foil. I did not. Because some lies are not trying to hurt anyone. Some lies are a frightened person's last available door. So I picked up my wrench, tightened the slipknot properly, then looked deeper under the sink until I found something real. The faucet cartridge was wearing down. Not urgent. Not tonight's problem. But it would be a problem eventually. "Well," I said, "the trap is handled. But your faucet cartridge is starting to go. I can take care of that now if you have a little time." Her shoulders dropped so slightly most people would not have seen it. I saw it. "I have time," she said. "If you do, I do." She nodded too quickly. "Good. That's good." I turned back to the cabinet and started working on the faucet. It gave both of us cover. Tools are useful that way. If your hands are busy, your heart can sneak closer without looking suspicious. For a while, we made small talk. Her week. My work. Mrs. Pacheco's war with the laundry machine. The building's ancient pipes. The weather warming up. Then Maeve said, "Can I tell you something?" I stayed under the sink. "Sure, I'm moving." My hand stopped. I made it move again. "When?" "Saturday, I set the wrench down." Saturday was 6 days away. "Where?" "Asheville, North Carolina. 11 hours, give or take." I stayed looking at the pipe because my face had not been warned. "That's a big move," I said. "It's a good job. Arts work?" "Program director. Bigger nonprofit. Better funding. Better pay. A real step." She sounded like she had repeated those facts to herself until they had become armor. "That sounds good," I said. "It is." But her voice broke on the second word. I slid out from under the sink and sat up. Her kitchen suddenly looked different, the table for two, the dinner, the two clean cabinet, the hallway outside our doors. 2 years of small, safe moments. 6 days left. I looked toward her bedroom door. It was closed. Now that I knew, I could see the signs. A missing picture from the wall. A stack of flattened boxes tucked behind a chair. Books gone from the shelf near the window. The apartment trying to pretend it was not already leaving. "Maeve," I said softly. She closed her eyes. "You know, don't you?" "Yes, I'm sorry." "For moving?" "For the sink." I waited. She wiped one hand over her forehead, then laughed once without any humor. I loosened it. "I know. I didn't make it dangerous. I know. I watched 3 videos. That part worries me more. I deserved that." She sat down on the kitchen floor across from me, still holding the dish towel like it was the last thing keeping her upright. "I didn't know how to ask you over." There it was. Not dramatic. Not polished. Just the truth. Small enough to fit inside one sentence and heavy enough to change the room. "You could have knocked," I said. "I know, you could have asked me to dinner." "I know." "Then why the plumbing crime?" She smiled through the embarrassment. "Because a broken sink is normal. And dinner? Less normal. A little. I thought if I had a reason for you to come over, then maybe dinner could look accidental." I looked at the fully cooked meal waiting on her stove. "You planned an accidental dinner?" "I am hearing how bad it sounds." "It sounds very organized. I'm good at programs." Clearly, she laughed again, and this time it was real for half a second. Then her face folded. "I'm leaving Saturday, Ray," I heard. "I signed the offer. I gave notice. I hired movers. My sister already mailed me a list of restaurants near my new apartment like I'm moving to a foreign country and not North Carolina." "That sounds like sister behavior." "It is." She looked at the table, then back at me. "I stood in my bedroom last night with half my life in boxes, and I realized I was going to leave this building without ever having one real evening with you. Not hallway real, not weather emergency real, just real." My chest hurt. She kept going because stopping would have been harder, and I tried to think of a normal way to ask. I really did. But how do you knock on a man's door 6 days before you move and say, "Before I disappear, would you please come sit in my kitchen so I can find out whether I imagined the last 2 years?" I said nothing, because there was no answer that would not have broken me open too soon. "So I loosened the sink," she said, "because that was easier than telling the truth." I looked down at my hands. They were scratched from work, dry at the knuckles, still holding a small wrench. I had fixed hundreds of leaks. I had no idea what to do with this one. Maeve looked humiliated. Not because I knew, because now there was nowhere left for either of us to hide. "I'm sorry," she said again. I set the wrench down between us. "Don't be. You should be annoyed." I was. "You were?" For about 5 seconds. "What changed?" I recognized the method. She frowned. "The method?" Making a practical excuse because the honest one feels too exposed. Her eyes softened. I leaned back against the cabinet. "That ice storm," I said. She went still. "I thought about it too," I said. "A lot." Her lips parted slightly. I looked toward the window because if I kept looking at her, I might lose the shape of the sentence. I went back into my apartment that night and sat in my kitchen until the power came back on. I remember thinking that was the best hour I had had in years. Not exciting, not big, just easy. Warm, like I had remembered something I didn't know I had forgotten. Maeve's eyes were wet now. "I thought I was the only one," she said. "No. Why didn't you ever say anything?" I smiled a little, but it hurt. "Because I'm very skilled at fixing the wrong things." She did not laugh. So I gave her the real answer. "Because I was scared. Because you lived across the hall. Because I had already been through one ending that made a home feel unsafe. And I didn't want to ruin the only place that felt simple. Because the hallway version of you was something I knew how to keep. The real version might have said no." She looked at me for a long moment. "I wouldn't have. I know that now." "You didn't know then?" I hoped. Hoping is not asking. "No," I said. "It is not." That hung between us. 2 adults on a kitchen floor, too old to pretend we did not know better, too human to pretend knowing better always helps. Maeve wiped her cheek with the back of her wrist. I waited too long. So did I. I'm still leaving. I know. I can't not go. I know that too. She looked relieved and disappointed at the same time. I wanted you to tell me to stay, she admitted. The sentence hit me harder than I expected. Not because I had not wanted to. Because I had. A selfish part of me wanted to stand in that kitchen and say the big romantic thing. Stay, forget Asheville. Forget the job. Forget the lease and the movers and the whole life waiting 11 hours away. But I had watched her face when she said program director. I had heard the small bright note in her voice when she talked about better funding, real responsibility. A step she had earned. It had been there under the fear. Maeve was not running away. She was moving toward something. And if I asked her to shrink that future so I could keep her across the hall, then whatever this was between us would begin with me loving my comfort more than her life. I could not do that. Not if I meant any of the things I had not yet said. You should go, I said. Her face changed like I had slapped her, gently but still. I know. No. Listen to me. You should go because you want the job. Because you earned it. Because when you say program director, your whole face changes, and I don't think anyone who cares about you should ask you to make your life smaller. She stared at me. That is a very mature answer. I hate it. A laugh escaped her. I hate it too. I would like to be selfish. Why aren't you? Trying something new. She looked down, smiling through tears. I continued. But Asheville is not the moon. No, and Saturday is not the end of the world. It feels like it. I know. What are you saying? I looked at her then. I'm saying you go. I help you load the truck if you'll let me. Then I call you Saturday night. Not next week when it feels less scary. Not after I convince myself you're busy. Saturday night. And you answer if you want to. Her eyes searched mine. And then? Then we find out on purpose. Long distance? Maybe 11 hours? I've driven farther for worse reasons. She laughed again, and this time the sound warmed the room. This could be nothing, she said. It could. It could be two lonely people making one night bigger than it is. It could. And if it is, then we'll know. She nodded slowly. And if it isn't, then we stop letting walls do our talking. Her face softened in a way I still remember better than most photographs. The stove clicked. Dinner waited. The faucet was still half taken apart. Life, being life, did not pause respectfully for emotional revelations. I finished the faucet. Maeve sat beside me on the floor and handed me tools I did not need because she wanted to help. She gave me a flathead when I asked for pliers and then apologized like she had failed a medical exam. When the faucet was fixed, I tested it. No drip. Real or fake. Now it's actually repaired, I said. Thank you. You're welcome. We both looked at the dinner. Is that also real? I asked. She stood and wiped her hands on her jeans. Painfully real. I cooked for 2 hours. For an accidental dinner. Please stop saying accidental. I stood too. I will after tonight. You won't. No. She smiled. We ate at the small table by the window. The food was chicken with lemon and rosemary, roasted potatoes, green beans, and bread she said she almost burned because I arrived faster than expected. You called a maintenance tech across the hall, I said. Response time was going to be strong. I thought you might be busy. I was eating toast over the sink. Dinner upgrade then. Considerable. The awkwardness did not vanish, but it changed. It became honest awkwardness. There is a difference. We talked about Asheville. Really talked. I asked about the job, the building, the people, the programs she wanted to run. She told me about a youth mural project she hoped to expand, about grants, about giving kids a place to be loud and safe at the same time. And there it was again. That light. Not a performance. Not a defense. Just Maeve talking about a future she wanted. I watched it and felt both proud and sad, which is a strange combination when you have technically had one dinner with someone and unofficially carried them in your chest for 2 years. She asked about my work too, not the polite version, the real one. She asked what I liked about fixing things. I told her broken things were honest. She said, "Are they? Mostly, or are they just easier than people?" I looked at her. She looked back. "Both," I said. After dinner, we washed dishes side by side. She washed. I dried. It felt too natural, which made it dangerous. At one point, she handed me a plate and said, "I wish this was our third dinner." "Only third? Fine. Seventh. Better. I wish it wasn't the first." I dried the plate carefully. "It isn't." She looked at me. "The ice storm counts," I said. Her smile was small and sad and grateful. "Then, this is the second." And the sink was the worst invitation in history, but effective. Very. We stood there with the last clean plate between us. Then Maeve reached into a drawer and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "I wrote something," she said. "That sounds dangerous." "It is." She handed it to me. At the top, in neat handwriting, it said, "Things I should have asked Ray instead of breaking the sink." Below it was a list. "Do you want dinner? Did that ice storm mean something to you too? Are you lonely or just quiet? Why do you fix everyone's small things and ignore your own? Would you have come over if I asked honestly, 'Can I call you after I move? Is it too late?'" I looked at the last line for a long time. Then I folded the paper carefully. "No," I said. Maeve's eyes lifted. "No what?" "It is not too late." She breathed in like she had been waiting weeks for air. I put the paper on the counter. Then I kissed her. Not fast. Not like a man trying to claim 6 lost days. Softly, carefully, like we were both aware that the moment was not fixing the problem. It was only telling the truth. Her hand rested against my chest. Mine found her waist. The kitchen light hummed over us. Somewhere below, a door closed. The building kept being old and noisy and alive around us. When we stepped apart, Maeve laughed once, breathless. "What?" I loosened a sink. "You did. That was my move. Not your finest technical work, but effective." I smiled. Very. Saturday came too fast. Days do that when they know you are counting them. On Wednesday, I helped Maeve carry donation boxes downstairs. Mrs. Pacheco saw us and smiled like she had already written 3 versions of the story for the building. On Thursday, Maeve texted me a picture of her sink with the caption, "Still behaving." Unlike me. I replied, "I'm monitoring the suspect." On Friday night, we had dinner again, this time in my apartment, because hers had become cardboard and echo. I made pasta badly. She ate it generously. We sat on the floor because I only had 2 chairs, and she said the floor felt more honest anyway. We did not pretend it was easy. That was what made it good. She told me she was scared. I told her I was too. She said, "What if we're better as Almost?" I said, "Almost has had 2 years. I'm tired of giving it rent-free space." She laughed at that. Then she cried. Then I held her. Saturday morning, the truck arrived at 8. Maeve wore jeans, an old blue jacket, and the expression of a woman trying not to feel everything until later. I carried boxes. Of course I did. Maintenance men are good at carrying heavy things quietly. Divorced men are good at pretending the weight is only in their hands. The neighbors noticed. They always do. Mrs. Pacheco brought muffins and said, "For the road," while looking directly at me instead of Maeve. Maeve took one and whispered, "She knows." Mrs. Pacheco knew before we did. That is probably true. We loaded the truck all morning. Books, lamps, kitchen boxes. The small table by the window. The blanket she had worn during the ice storm. A framed print of a yellow house her grandmother painted. The last box was labeled miscellaneous, which is what people write when a box contains pieces of a life they cannot organize. When the apartment was empty, Maeve and I stood in her kitchen. The sink looked ordinary. That almost made me laugh. "What?" she asked. I was thinking how innocent it looks. "It has a criminal past." "So do you." "One plumbing incident." "That I know of." She smiled. Then the smile faded. "This was a good kitchen." "It was. I waited too long to invite you into it. I waited too long to knock." She looked around the empty room. "I'm going to miss this building. It will miss you. The elevator plant won't. That plant has been dead since September. Again, some things deserve an audience. I looked at her. Yes, I said. They do. Downstairs, beside the truck, Maeve handed me a key. My old key, she said. Not useful anymore. Then why give it to me? So you remember there was a door. I closed my fingers around it. There still is. She smiled, but her eyes were wet. Then she hugged me. Not a polite goodbye hug. A full one. Face against my shoulder. Hands tight in my jacket. Call me tonight, she said. I will. No waiting 2 days because you think that makes it less intense. I would never. She pulled back and looked at me. Ray, I would absolutely do that. I know. I won't. Good. She touched my face once like she was trying to memorize the proof of me. Then she got in the truck. I stood on the curb as she drove away. There are departures that feel loud even when they make no sound. That was one. I went upstairs to my apartment. The hallway looked wrong with her door empty across from mine. No sticky note. No soft light under the frame. No possibility of her stepping out with a tote bag and saying good morning like the whole world had not changed. I sat in my kitchen until dark. At 8:17, my phone rang. Maeve, I answered on the first ring. You were supposed to call me, I said. I got impatient. You told me not to be careful. I know. I was testing the instruction. Did you get there? Halfway, I stopped near Lexington. My sister said driving tired is how people become cautionary tales. She sounds wise. She sounds bossy. Also that. There was a quiet. Then she said, I miss my sink. I smiled for the first time all day. That sink was trouble. I miss the trouble. I miss it too. Another silence. This one did not feel empty. It felt like the hallway had become a phone line. We talked for an hour. The next night, too. And the next. That was 8 months ago. I am not going to tell you we solved long distance because we did not. Long distance is not romantic most of the time. It is calendars, gas prices, bad reception, weather, 2 people eating dinner on video calls while pretending that counts enough. It is wanting to touch someone's hand and settling for hearing them wash dishes through a speaker. But it is also effort, chosen effort. And chosen effort after years of careful silence can feel like love learning to walk. Maeve stayed in Asheville. She should have. The job was hard and good and hers. She sent me pictures of murals, community events, messy classrooms, paint on her sleeves. Her face looked alive in those photos. I visited once a month when work allowed. 11 hours there. 11 back. Worth every mile. She came to St. Louis twice. The first time, she stood in the hallway outside 4B and touched the door like someone visiting a place where an old version of herself had lived. The apartment had a new tenant by then, a graduate student with too many plants and a dog that hated me. Maeve looked at the door and said, I'm glad I left. I nodded. Then she turned to me. I'm glad I called before I did. I still keep the list she gave me. It is folded in the top drawer of my toolbox, between spare blades and old receipts. Under it is a small slip nut I bought at the hardware store, the same size as the one she loosened. Not because I need it, because I need the reminder. The sink was never broken, but the silence was. That is what I think about now. How often we wait for something outside us to give permission. A storm, a leak, a deadline, a moving truck. We build excuses because the simple truth feels too bright to stand under. Maeve loosened a pipe because she did not know how to say, please come over. I am leaving, and I do not want to go without knowing if you felt it too. I spent 2 years fixing everyone's small problems because I did not know how to say, I am lonely, and you are the person across the hall who makes that feel less permanent. Neither of us was brave in the beginning, but we became brave enough before the truck pulled away. That counts. A month ago, I drove to Asheville again. Maeve met me at the door of her apartment wearing paint-stained jeans and a smile that still made me feel like the hallway light had come on. Dinner was waiting. No candles. No fake emergency. Just 2 plates and a sink that worked perfectly. I looked under it anyway. She crossed her arms. Do you inspect every sink now? Only suspicious ones. And? I stood and wiped my hands. Solid, she smiled. Then she reached into a drawer and took out a dish towel. I have something to confess. I narrowed my eyes. What did you loosen? Nothing, Maeve, nothing mechanical. That qualifier worries me. She stepped closer. I loosened my schedule next month. I stared at her. There's a conference in St. Louis, she said. 3 weeks. Temporary project. I said yes. I felt something open in my chest. 3 weeks? Across town from your building. That sounds very convenient. I planned it. Like dinner, better than the sink. I laughed. She did too. Then she took my hand. This time I'm asking directly, she said. Can I stay with you? No broken sink. No excuse. No hand-loosened slip nut. Just the question. I looked at the woman who had once needed a fake repair to invite me into her kitchen, and I thought about all the things people call too late when really they only mean difficult. No, I said. Her face fell for half a second. Then I smiled. You can come home with me. She looked at me, and there it was again, that old ice storm quiet. The feeling of something fragile deciding to stay warm. Careful, she said. I'm done with careful. She kissed me then, in a kitchen where nothing was leaking and nothing had to be broken before we were allowed to want each other there. That is the part I keep coming back to. Not the trick. Not the dinner. Not even the goodbye. The permission. The sink was never broken. We were just two careful people, waiting for something else to give us permission. And one night, with 6 days left and dinner cooling on the stove, Maeve stopped waiting. I am grateful every day that she did. Because sometimes love does not arrive loudly. Sometimes it knocks through the wrong door. Sometimes it hides inside a practical excuse. Sometimes it looks like a woman twisting a dish towel in her kitchen, asking if the leak is bad, when what she really means is, will you stay long enough for me to be brave? And sometimes, if you are lucky, you are finally brave enough to hear the real question.